Good evening. You're watching the main news on HKIBC. I'm Chloe Feng. Our top stories tonight. Officials get rid of more COVID cups, including RAT tests, before entering bars. The government unveils its first-use blueprint to give younger people better opportunities. And Chief Executive Zhang Li leaves for Beijing tomorrow on his first duty visit. People visiting bars or taking part in some activities will not have to take a rapid antigen test beforehand. The government decided to ease more restrictions ahead of the festive season, although COVID cases remain high, Macy Mock reports.
From Thursday, people will no longer be required to test themselves before going to bars, clubs, and banquets or joining local tours. The 75% capacity limit placed on bars will be dropped, as will the 85% capacity cap for cinemas, performance venues, and religious premises. Newly married couples can invite more than 240 people for their wedding banquet. People can also eat in the outdoor areas of sports and entertainment venues, but the cap on diners per table in restaurants will remain.
We know that the holidays and the seasonings is actually coming up, and the whole government actually looking deeply into where we can actually further relax the measures so that we can go back to a normal life. Even there's a high number of cases of positive cases at the current moment, we still observe the slope of the increase seems to be actually quite settled.
There were 14,982 new COVID cases today, and 870 of those were imported. Virus-related deaths jumped to 33, up by a quarter from a week ago. The government meanwhile poured cold water on hopes that the vaccine pass and mask requirement will be dropped. However, it will review whether students will still need to take rapid antigen tests before going to school. Maisie Mock, HKIBC.
The estimated cost of the Lantau Tomorrow Vision project has increased to $580 billion, up $80 billion from the original budget set in 2018. In its latest paper submitted to the Legislative Council, the government suggested building 3 instead of 2 artificial islands in the waters east of Lantau. But the total land area will be reduced from 1,700 hectares to 1,000 hectares, with the provision of housing units cut by half. The government also proposed changing the route of a rail link. It will connect North Lantau to Hong Sui Kiu instead of the coastal area of Tuen Mun. Roundtable lawmaker Michael Tin slammed the proposal as unfair to Tuen Mun residents. A United Airlines plane has made an emergency landing in Hong Kong because of suspected engine failure 1 hour after leaving the city bound for Guam. A bird is believed to have flown into an engine of flight UA2831 after it took off at 10:30 a.m. Online footage showed sparks bursting from the right engine as it prepared to land at Chat Lap Kau. Police and ambulance paramedics were on standby as American airliner landed safely. No casualties were reported. Chief Executive Zhang Li is setting off for Beijing to brief senior leaders on how Hong Kong is dealing with COVID and the economy. He will also push for the reopening of the mainland border, Macy Mock reports.
John Lee heads to Beijing tomorrow to meet state leaders on his first duty visit since becoming chief executive in July. His schedule has yet to be announced, but during her last duty visit, his predecessor Carrie Lam met President Xi Jinping and Premier Li Keqiang. During his 4-day trip, Li will report on Hong Kong's economic, social, and political situation.
And will also be explaining what I have done in the period in on the one hand, controlling COVID, and at the same time, maintaining the economy to run so that it will be allowed to be strengthened.
Lee said he will express to state leaders the Hong Kong public's desire for the border to be reopened.
We have to consider how we do it in an orderly fashion, maintaining a good control of the risks and the potential problems that may arise when new arrangements are introduced. But there is a very strong common commitment to ensure that things progress in good speed.
Lee added that he's looking forward to Beijing deciding whether an overseas lawyer can represent media mogul Jimmy Lai in a national security case. Chief Secretary Eric Chan will be acting chief executive while Lee is away. Maisie Mock, HKIBC.
Chief Executive John Lee has urged Google to rectify its search results to ensure that the March of the Volunteers comes up as the city's national anthem.
We all know very well that Google has the means to do it. It's a question of whether Google chooses to do it. If he chooses not to do it, then I think he has a lot to explain.
Lee said replacing the national anthem with another song is an offense in Hong Kong and an insult. This comes after a protest song was played at some sports events in which Hong Kong took part. Lee added that the government has contacted the Foreign Ministry office in the city after an official Ukrainian website portrayed the SAR flag in black and white as used by protesters in 2019. More than 2 million young people will be offered career choices under the government's first Youth Development Blueprint. Youth Affairs Chief Alice Mack pledged to roll out the measures in the coming 3 years in a systematic and impartial manner. Joanna Ho reports.
While the blueprint places great emphasis on nurturing patriotic youths, it also pledged to cater to the needs of the young generation. Over 2 million people aged between 12 and 39 in the city will get more career opportunities and a chance to secure a home under the blueprint. A main plank is the relaunch of the Starter Homes project, which will be implemented under a land sale program in the coming financial year. However, Home and Youth Affairs Secretary Alice Mack didn't disclose how many units will be provided, only saying the Development Bureau is looking for suitable sites. 2 committees will be set up to allow young people to engage in public affairs and contribute to the community. Some seats in the panels will be reserved for people who nominate themselves. Asked whether those who took part in the 2019 anti-government protests can join, Mack said opportunities will be provided to all, regardless of their backgrounds, as long as they meet the basic requirements. But she avoided a direct answer to a query whether the blueprint is only about reinforcing patriotism instead of reconciling damaged relationships with young people.
Our target of this blueprint is every young person in Hong Kong. So we're trying to make well use of this blueprint to let the young people understand and know what the government is trying to do to help them, to support them.
The government is setting up a new post of Commissioner for Youth to coordinate and review work on youth development. Joanna Ho, HKIBC.
Overseas, a congressional committee investigating the riots at the U.S. Capitol in January last year has urged the Justice Department to prosecute former President Donald Trump. His supporters had gone on the rampage in a futile bid to stop Congress from endorsing Joe Biden as the winner of the 2020 election. Sachin Kadvi reports.
After an 18-month investigation into the riots at the U.S. Capitol in January 2021, a Democratic-led committee has recommended charges against former President Donald Trump.
An insurrection is a rebellion against the authority of the United States. The committee believes that more than sufficient evidence exists for a criminal referral of former President Trump for assisting or aiding and comforting those at the Capitol who engaged in a violent attack on the United States.
The committee urged the Justice Department to charge Trump with assisting an insurrection, obstructing the probe, conspiring to defraud the country, and making false statements. The former president called the committee a kangaroo court, making a mockery of democracy. Representative Liz Cheney, one of the only two Republicans on the committee, said Trump sat in the Oval Office watching the violence on TV and did not instruct his supporters to disperse and leave the Capitol. Although the criminal referral does not officially call for action, federal prosecutors have plans to do so. The term of the current Congress ends in a fortnight when the Republicans will regain control of the House of Representatives. The inquiry committee will cease to exist, but Trump's fate will depend on the Justice Department. Sachin Katwi, HKIBC.
Human rights groups have given the thumbs down to a British High Court ruling that deporting migrants to Rwanda is lawful.
This country, the UK, ought instead to simply be addressing the rights to asylum of people who have sought asylum on the UK's territory, rather than seeking to expel people and wash its hands of its own responsibilities by passing them to Rwanda. In terms of the signal that it sends to Rwanda, or indeed anywhere else in the world, that the UK is not prepared to take its responsibilities but prefers to try and shunt them on to somebody else, well, that's a disastrous message.
Mr. Speaker. Home Secretary Suella Braverman, however, said she felt vindicated by the court's decision. The British government hopes that the prospect of being sent to Rwanda would deter migrants. Last week, 4 migrants died while crossing the Channel from France to Britain. The Hang Seng Index closed down 1.3% today as the local stock market retreated for a second straight session on dampened investor sentiment because of the mainland's COVID situation. Developer Country Garden plunged 8.8%, while its property management firm CG Services dropped 7.8%. Blue chips Alibaba and Tencent both headed south, finishing 3.4% lower. Smartphone maker Xiaomi fell 2% after deciding to lay off 15% of its workforce. And now let's take a look at the markets. The Hang Seng Index closed down 258 points. Top 10 active stocks: Tencent down $11, Meituan down $3.30, and Alibaba down $3. Kuaishou down $3.40, Hong Kong Exchange down $4.60. Forex trading against the Hong Kong dollar, the euro is at 8.27, British pound at 9.45, Australian dollar at 5.19. Moving on to the UK market, the London FTSE is currently down 1 point. The yen has jumped to a 4-month high after Japan's central bank stunned the markets by giving the green light for a rise in long-term interest rates. The Bank of Japan said the rate for 10-year bonds can rise as much as 50 basis points, double its current cap. The unexpected move sent the yen surging almost 3% against the US dollar, but Japanese stocks slumped, with the Nikkei giving up 2.4%. On to the weather now. It'll be cold with sunny intervals tomorrow. Temperatures will range between 15 and 20 degrees, mainly fine and dry for the next few days. Now let's take a look at the weather around the world. That's our main news for Tuesday night. Join us for more news at 11. I'm Chloe Feng. Thanks for watching. Good night.